You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to Oklahoma HOF on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatobi for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode down at Bedford's Camera today. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little hungover, a little worse for wear, so I probably sound terrible, a little more croakier than I usually am. Hangovers when you're 34 aren't fun, but fight night was last night, and I had a very good time. Shout out to our mutual friend Billy for inviting me to fight night. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Mr. Jeff Morefield, who military, police, all the things, but now out of that and have a foundation called On Call Project, which we're going to dive into. But excited to chat it up, excited to hear your story and the backstory. And I mean, did you just grow up like a kid and think, I want to be a police officer? Like, everyone's got a story, but most people, I would say, get into being a first responder because it's generally a family or father figure or someone there that's like done it.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks again, Mike, for bringing me on. To just a privilege and an honor to be here. I came from a military background. So my father was a pilot in the Air Force. I was a commissioned officer, wow. and grew up in Blytheville, Arkansas. That's where I was born. Moved to Del Rio, Texas, where my dad was a flight instructor in Del Rio. And in the military life, you're moving every 3 to 5 years, you know what I mean? And so moved up to Tinker Air Force Base, where I did some time in the elementary school there in Midwest City. And then this is about 1985 time frame, and still during the Cold War and all the rest of that stuff. And we moved out to Germany when I was a young kid. So I was 4th grade through 6th grade, and to see that lifestyle as a 4th grader through 6th grader, not only during the Cold War, but also, if you remember correctly, Gaddafi was very active in bombing a lot of those areas, not only just in Germany but elsewhere. And So you drive up to the gate at Ramstein Air Force Base, and you got the MPs out there with their M60s, and they're checking underneath the cars and all the rest of the stuff, And I also did a Boy Scout troop, which the Boy Scouts would never do this anymore, but we actually went into East Berlin. So I got to see the Wall. I got to see Checkpoint Charlie. I had interactions with the East German Guard, So I had an East German Guard literally rip the film out of a camera. I had an East German Guard, as we're putting our passports up against the wall, walk up onto our bus, and I'm thinking, I'm seeing these people on the other side who have died trying to get on the other side, and now all of a sudden I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm ever going to see my family again, right? So
how old are you at this point?
I was 5th grade.
Oh, so what's that, 10? 11?
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it very much left an impression on me on the value of America, right, and the freedoms that we have and stuff like that. So, and then obviously seeing my dad doing what he was doing, and then we'd go back and forth. We came back to Tinker, did my 7th grade through my first month of my senior year in Oklahoma, and then we moved back to Germany my senior year in high school. So if you don't think I was pissed, I was a little mad at the situation, but at the same time, I was varsity soccer. I was I was a state swimmer. Just all the things. I was, I played baseball, and to be ripped out of that environment like that was pretty intense. But what it did is it allowed me to understand a lot of different cultures, a lot of different settings. I traveled from the UK to Portugal to Italy to all these other places, Czechoslovakia, back when Czechoslovakia was pretty poor and coming out of the communist nation, and so. From that, I actually was in JROTC and in my senior year because I was too late to get into a lot of the sports. So as a cadet, I actually was the number 2 cadet in that year, even though I was a brand new cadet. I ended up being so I got to fly an F-16 flight simulator. Like the actual F-16 flight. Dude, it was great, so right? Awesome. So I'm taxiing this fighter plane, and they got me. I'm in the cockpit, and I'm flying this thing, and I get done. I actually landed the plane. Like with very little instruction, so cool. Landed the plane. The only bad thing is I didn't manipulate the pedals well enough to where I slid off and the screen went red, right? So I was like, but anyway, I got done and they printed off this deal and the guy was like, man, I think you should be a pilot. Yeah. And I said, well, that makes sense because my dad's a pilot. He's an AWACS pilot. Okay. My grandfather was a P-38 pilot with General Patton in North Africa. Yeah. My other grandfather was an admiral in the Coast Guard. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the military mindset was there, right? Yeah. So I left there. My dad wanted me to go to California for college, and because he was a resident in California, and I was like, so I applied at UC Davis and all the rest of the stuff, and I really didn't want to go there. I wanted to go back to what I thought my roots were, even though I was there pulled. I felt like Oklahoma was my home. So I got accepted at University of Central Oklahoma and University of Oklahoma, and I attended the ROTC program there at Oklahoma. After my second year in the ROTC at Oklahoma, I was disqualified because I had an asthma attack when I was 5 years old. So my dependent records, and the reason is because it was right after the Gulf War. I'm showing my age a little bit, but it was right after the Gulf War, and nobody was being accepted into the service with any type of respiratory issues. So really kind of a gut punch to me. And so I was like, I love the uniform. Yeah. And I had some aspirations of maybe doing the law enforcement side of the house. So I started working as what they call a student officer there at the UCO. And I literally was walking out one day, and I was 22 years old, and my chief looked at me and goes, "Hey, Jeff, you want to do this full time?" I was like, yeah. I was a junior in college. And he was like, "Hey, we'll pay you $20,000 a year, and you can go be a full-time cop." And I'm like, game on. Done. You got a job. Right? So I did the 6-year plan instead of the 4-year plan in college. I went to all the academies and trainings and stuff like that. Did UCO for a year, went out to UConn for 3, and then I actually ended up in Edmond for 22 years. Okay. There was really where I solidified my career. So, everything from a SWAT officer, underwater search and recovery, field training officer. I was a gang intelligence officer, worked a lot of the violent crimes type stuff, trained a lot in Chicago, LA, and various different places to where we saw a lot of their different activities, and then would bring it back here to the Edmond, Oklahoma City area and say, hey, these are some of the tactics they're using out there on the criminal side to do their nefarious activity. But one of the things that I really hung on to was the fact that I wasn't wearing another uniform that I really wanted to wear. And so, because I was a SWAT officer, I was good with just being in the grass and the grind and all the rest of that stuff. I said, man, let's look at the Army side. And so I entered into the Oklahoma Army National Guard and signed an officer candidate school contract. Went to basic training at the age of 34.
Okay.
That was interesting.
I bet that, yeah. You have to get the haircut too.
I had to do it, right? So I was a little bit more advanced in my hair at that time, but they took it, and I was one of the oldest. But this is 2008, 2009 time frame, so a lot of people were losing their jobs because of the housing market, right? Yeah. And so my bunkmate was actually a probation and parole officer out of New York, and he was 40, and so went through basic training, got done with that, came back and went through Officer Cadet School, which is a 12-month program at the state of Oklahoma. Started out with 55 of us, only 9 of us graduated. I was one of those graduates, and then went into the field artillery world. So deployed multiple times. Was in Afghanistan 2013-14. I was attached to 4th ID, which is out of Fort Carson, and was involved in a lot of your division level targeting, where we took various different objectives off the battlefield. Worked with various different soft units, your special operations, and then also your conventional units. So I was really tied in with those guys, and then came back and did a stint here down at we did recovery efforts down at Hurricane Harvey down there in the Houston area, and then my last deployment I did was in 2019-20, where we went out to Iraq and Kuwait and those areas, and I commanded a 120 man team out there. Wow. So came back in 2020, and I reintegrated back into my police career, which is really kind of challenging, being deployed, coming back here, police deployed, and so I kind of got used to that reintegration process. And then I was involved in an officer-involved shooting in 2021, and that really kind of propelled hey, I need to start looking at what I'm going to do afterwards. There had already been some conversations beforehand on, what does my life look like after I get done with the police department, but really hadn't done too much about it. And so I started really researching what I call our next phase of life. What does that look like? Yeah. You know what I mean? How do you prepare for it? How do you put yourself together for it? And then I started looking hey, I came from the military, and they have some similar programs. And then I started looking at the first responder side, police, fire, EMS, corrections, dispatch, all the rest of the stuff. And I couldn't find one structured offboarding process for our people. And while I was doing that, I started noticing people that I knew that were dying early, late 40s, early 50s, and they had, recently left and all the rest of the stuff. I'm like, what is going on here, right? So I started looking at that and found 2 nationwide stats, and there's various different research out there, but they say that we die 5 to 7 years after our service. And a lot of it has to do with repurposing. The other one is that we have a 24% higher mortality rate than any other occupation in the United States. Yeah. So we die at about 66 as opposed to 82, 85 across the United States. And the big killers of us, and I say us as the FR community, the FR community, is cardiac issues, your cancers, and suicide. Okay. And so the cardiac obviously is induced by a lot of different stressors. Some of the things that I found and I went through when I left is I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what my skill set is. I don't know where my attributes are. I have no idea how this translates over to the private sector. Hello, they speak a different language, right? So you can't walk into whatever company that you're at and start knife handing people and saying that you're going to do something, right? That just doesn't cut it, right? So you have to have that communication network, and you've got to change some of your tones, right? Well, none of us are being taught that. We onboard so hard. We onboard methodically. We onboard tedious, from the application process to the interviews, the polygraphs, the oral boards, the MMPIs. I mean, all the physicals that we have to go through. And for us to literally just be sent out and not offboarded, not give us any structure and just say, thanks, see you later.
Right.
That's it. That's all. And then we expect to survive after that. Because I look at us, if you look at our logo, it's real tattered on the O side. And that's to signify all the things that we go through. The P, the project, the offboarding is very clean. And the idea behind that is to get these guys to really understand what it looks like financially. Holistic health. What does it look like to write a resume? How do you actually interview for a job if you want to in the private sector?
Yeah.
None of that is being taught to us. So you're being left, they say they take care of you. And they do on the professional side from the onboarding and during, but what they don't do is they don't do any personal development. Yeah. They don't do any offboarding like I talked about. And that's the problem that we're having, and it's been identified. And now that we're a year into this, I'm having some pretty big sit downs. You know what I mean? And conversations with some pretty decent entities that are looking at this as going, number one, we didn't know this was a problem. Number two, educate us, right? So now we're in this knowledge piece on the level, and eventually we'll get kind of into the application, right? How are we going to apply these skill sets? How are we going to apply this knowledge that we're gaining to level up our people, right? So if I were wanting to go to just a big entity, Devon Energy, right? How can I be an asset to Devon Energy? How could I be an asset to a local feed store? How could I be a quality control person? How could I be a banker? How could I go into sales? Because we have all these leadership, communication, networking, critical thinking skill sets that we have. How do you best apply them?
Yeah. That you've been taught that are hyper-focused to your role as like I said, a first responder, but then those skills are amazing skills.
Yes.
It's just that okay, let's redirect.
Yes.
It sounds simple, but it's not.
It's not. Yeah.
But,
it sounds simple, but it's not easy.
Having the intention like you guys have to do that, I'm not surprised that just after a year in, you're having big conversations because there's a serious need for this stuff.
Yeah.
Especially when the data and you talk about, dying in your 60s compared to when you're 80.
Yeah.
Pretty big difference.
Yeah.
You're not seeing your grandkids.
Right. And I kind of look at this like this, Mike. When the NFL, started seeing guys that were dying, and they started looking back and why are these guys having so many issues? And then they looked and they said, oh, they're CTE. Oh my gosh, we need to have concussion protocol.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar deal. You know what I mean? And it's oh, ouch.
Sadly, it's when it's too late, right?
Right, exactly. So now they have these protocols and all the rest of this stuff. And I'm not saying that it's perfect on the NFL side or even college side, but if you're going to look at your first responders as athletes, that's what
highly trained athletes.
They need to be treated like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the mindset that we've taken. And the great thing about it is a lot of the donors, my board members, all those that are in this nonprofit are very, very big hard chargers. They love the fact they love their first responders. Number one, they have some sort of a tie to it, whether it's a relative or they've been one or something like that, right? And they see that the talent that has not been tapped yet.
Yeah, the leadership talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And right now we're in an environment where people are hurting for work or employees. So anyway, this is really kind of curating, and it's starting to really kind of spin up, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because there's so many different positive byproducts to all of it, and so I just, I really have been able to put my hat over here on the police side. I still have a lot of good contacts and everything, but I'm really focused on keeping their health and their hope by giving them some ownership, right? Giving them some resources, right? Yeah. So they can actually feel good in taking ownership and what they're going to do after they get done.
Having a reason.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. It's all about repurposing.
Yeah. So. Before we dive down the rabbit hole on everything that's coming up, so many exciting things happening, go back to, do you still wish you could fly a plane and still wish you were a pilot?
I'm glad you asked that, man. So I had a friend of mine, He works for the PD, and he has a Cessna 182, and he goes, "Hey Jeff, let's go flying." Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So, a small airplane, got it. You know what I mean? And I'm okay with it. And I get up there, and we're flying, and I took the controls, and I'm like, oh God, it was so awesome. Like, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was one of those things where it's just like, yeah, it was cool to do this. But man, if I could have got, I mean, if I could have gotten rid of my medical records, and never shown them, then I could have been flying an F-16 Falcon and been having a great old time.
Full Top Gun.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. All that stuff, man. I would have had that flight suit going. Yeah. There's actually a picture of me when I was a kid wearing my dad's flight suit, and at the time, he had a Playboy bunny.
Yeah.
What was his call sign? God, you know what? I've never asked him that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have to ask him that.
I know your granddad's was too.
Yeah, his was Mop.
Okay.
So on the side of his P-38, it said Mop because he had just a ton of hair.
I was going to say it had to be.
It had a ton of hair. But my dad was a heavy driver, so I don't know if the heavy guys they had one. If you go in my dad's office, I mean, just an array of different masks and all the things that are on there. But I have to ask him if he ever had one.
Did he take you flying?
No, that was a big. We tried to get even my mom to go up there and fly with him, and the Air Force wouldn't let that happen. And I think it's just because of what if it crashes and the whole family's taken out, blah blah blah, that type of thing. And I get it, but it was really neat when my dad retired. They did the whole throwing the water over the plane.
As he's taxiing.
Oh yeah, as he's taxiing in, and he comes off the ramp and everybody's dumping water on him and all the rest of the stuff. And I was a young kid, I was probably, I say young, I was in my teenage years, you know what I mean? I feel that's young, but I look up to my dad so much, just because of, he went to Gonzaga University, and we actually were able, literally last week was the 1 year that we went back there last year, and we were able to go to a Gonzaga basketball game, and we were able to go to his ROTC area, and man, they treated us like kings. Awesome. I mean, and just because of who he was and all the rest of the stuff, and it was so neat to kind of go see his lineage, where he came from, how he came through, and at the game we literally sat right next to the president of the university, and the president of the university's taking pictures of us on the court, all the rest of that, and Gonzaga, and so it was just really kind of a cool deal, and I look up to him because he got to do so many things. He had one really cool job. It was called the 8th TDCS, and they were basically the backup to Air Force One, and it was based out of here at a Tinker, and so he would fly a lot of different 4-star generals all over the place, and he, like Steve Martin and all these people that he would fly in for the USO events and during the Persian Gulf War. So he got to really facilitate a lot of the soldier, airman, Marine morale by doing that. You know what I mean? And I thought that was really neat that he was able to do something like that. So I really look up to him. Yes, do I wish I could fly? Yes. But he always got in my squad car, and he always talked about man, you have so many buttons and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, have you seen your cockpit? Right? I'm like, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah, all these buttons, don't touch that way. All this
exactly,
stuff,
right? Yeah.
That must have been so cool, though. Yeah, and also to have him, get in your squad car and be kind of have his, because when you're a guy, right, you grow up, it's fire and fire trucks and police cars and planes and all that stuff.
All the cool toys.
It's all the toys, right? And then when you're an adult, then you get to do this for a living. I have a friend of mine who's a firefighter, and he's like, every time he's like, I can't believe they pay me to do this. Right? And they pay well too. Yeah,
exactly.
Plenty of time off.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's but like you're saying, there's serious. You found a need. And doing great work for it. And like I said, there's so many things still to do, but we're starting on the ladder.
Yeah.
What are your back to your kind of Germany visits and then going back? Why did you have to go back that second time then out of that first senior year type?
Yeah, so my dad was, it was a permanent change of station. It's called PCS. So he had the opportunity of either going to Panama, the Pentagon, or Germany. And my mom was like, "We're going back to Germany."
Yeah,
because
your mom loved it.
Oh, she loved it. Yeah,
wow.
and my mom actually my mom. There's a 16-year gap between my sister and I, and so she had a young child, and so she was able to actually. Had put my younger sister into a German elementary school.
So your younger sister speaks German.
Yeah. So
do you speak a little bit?
I know beer bitte.
Yeah, the most important part.
Exactly, right? And then wo ist the toilet? Because you're going to have to find out where the bathroom is pretty soon afterwards.
They really drink beer over there.
Oh, they do, brother.
Yeah,
they do.
Dangerous.
But they got to do all that. We lived on the economy. We didn't live on the base. We lived about 20 minutes. There was a castle literally in our backyard. It was great. It's awesome. You know what I mean? So I loved it. I look forward to Mike going back. I haven't been back since that time that I was there. I actually was in Oklahoma. My dad was still stationed in Germany during the bombing here. Mm-hmm. And so my last time to go back was 1996, and we went to Ireland. I mean, we did all the cool things, you know what I mean? So it was and so I'm looking forward to taking, because I want to give my daughter that experience too, that culture side of the house. I'm a big advocate for valuing the United States, don't get me wrong, but going out and see what else is out there, you know what I mean? And come back and say, man, we live in a great country, but there's just all the great food and the drinks and the cultures and all the rest of the stuff. So
and just like I said, that world kind of view, right? And understanding how great the things are. People, I always get asked, like, when would you move home? I'm like, no, because like I know what it's like to live back home. I know what it's like to live here, and I love living here, right? Like, and they're like, but what about the weather and all this? And I'm like, yeah, we get a few tornadoes. That's about it, right? Sure. But like, it doesn't rain for 3 months straight here, like it does in the UK.
Man, we were in Ireland. We had 2 weeks of no rain.
Yeah, that's lucky. And
like sun.
Yeah,
I was. Wow. Okay.
It's a fun place, but I mean, also like you sounds like just being curious and finding out like their law enforcement there is totally different. To
here, right? Their Polizei and all the rest of it totally different. Right? Yeah, we actually would have an exchange program where the Polizei would come here and then we would go there. Yeah, and I never got the opportunity to go there and work with the Polizei there, but they would come here and they were just like, you guys are doing what and how?
Shoot guns.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I mean, their speeding is done by cameras. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. They're not actually out there in black and white.
That's what I thought would be to that point. That's what I thought would be an insane business here. Yeah. Like if you could privatize, like, and people would probably hate it, but if you could like figure out how to privatize speeding cameras here. And because for us, like, you either have like they don't like pull you over. Sure. They send you a letter in the mail of a photo that they've taken of you speeding. Yeah. And they used to take it head on as well, which I had one when I was like 17. It was not great. It shows my get a letter in the mail. My mom's like, you got a letter from the police today. And I was like, really? She goes, are you speeding? I was like, oh no.
They got me.
Yeah, but you don't get pulled over, which there's all that, but it's just a lot cleaner way to do it. But then you don't know you've been pulled over or speeding, and so it could generate a lot of revenue.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With the going over there, the history, obviously, and understanding and getting your worldview, and then you come back and go to university. What do you decide to go to university in UCO at? Like, what was your thinking? I'm going to go to school for what?
Yeah, so I went for criminal justice. Okay. I did. I went there and I said, I looked at a sociology, type. So I don't get me wrong, I was wanting to be a pilot, but at the same time, there was this back and forth, do I want to do this? Do I want to, you know what I mean? And so I think I set myself up for success by, going and having that criminal justice, degree program already beforehand. Cause you could have, if you go in the service, you can have any degree, you know what I mean? It's just as long as you get something. And I just felt like having that criminal justice as a kind of a backup just in case something goes wrong. And to be honest with you, Mike, I think I don't really did it intentionally. Yeah. I didn't even think about it. I just did it. You know what I mean? And
something in you that's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. It's a no-brainer. Yeah. And go from there.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So
what was college like versus going to school in Germany and coming back to the States and being like, I'm going to college now, like I'm an adult, but with that worldview and travel, like a lot of people I would assume in your college class had the travel that you had. They
gave me a lot of crap to be honest with you, because I can't. So I entered into a fraternity house. And it was a fraternity house that had a lot of guys that were kind of small town guys. Okay. So I come into this worldview type aspect, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't do myself any favors, Mike. I had the Pat Riley hair.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know who Pat Riley. I do, but I can't recall. What
So he was the Lakers head coach, right? So he slicked back, caked down hair,
nice.
right?
Okay.
So I had a lot of hair back then. And I had huge hoop earrings.
Okay.
Like big old gold, and that was the fad in Germany at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I walked
metal.
it was either that or your discotheque or whatever it was.
Yeah, no in between
there was the
right?
techno and all the rest of the stuff. And so I walk into this place and they look at me like, what is this guy? I'm like, hey, want to join your fraternity?
Halloween's next month, pal.
Right,
Like,
exactly,
what are you doing?
right?
Yeah.
One of them looked at me and says, you are never taking a composite picture because that is not going up on the wall. And I was like, all right, cool. Touche. But honestly, I got kind of told later, they were like, man, you really actually kind of helped us get out of our comfort zone, right? Because they had that. And I'm not saying anything bad about small towns. It's just like they were just very confined in that
you're
mentality.
in your bubble,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
You know what you know, and that's it. Yeah.
And they were having problems like, nobody wants to come to our social events and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, you kind of need to come out a little bit. You know what I mean? Just like show your face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Have a little fun.
It's not just football games and fun.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And so that kind of helped out, but I really enjoyed it. I got a lot of crap for being a guy that graduated from Germany and then being there in Oklahoma, but it was all fun. You know what I mean? It was one of those, hey, you want to go meet the German? You can go over there. And I'm like, I'm not German. I'm totally American, man. Yeah. And then, like, when I would leave in the summer, because I would go back to Germany during the summer when my dad was still stationed over there, I would leave my car at the fraternity house, and it would sit there for like 3 months. I'm like, would you guys like help a brother out and like start it up a little bit and drive it around? You know what I mean? So it was a $3,000 Chrysler LeBaron.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It needed to be started up every now and then.
It needed some help, some love on it. And so, Billy, I guarantee you would tell you a little bit about it. But it was a good time. It was fun. When you're in Germany, you look over that counter, you can drink.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, and I remember going back and thinking that I could take my 3.2 alcohol and go back and have some fun with some friends over in Germany and drink like I do here. And I was like, wait a minute, you got like 7-point alcohol here, over there, and all their big
and a beer takes 2 hands.
Yeah, their beer,
right?
big beer steins and all the rest of the stuff. You know what I mean? And anyway, so it was fun. It was a good time, and I saw so much value in it. And I talk about it all the time. I still have a lot of like the Volts marches. I don't know if you know anything about that, but there are these, 5K, 10K, 20K the walks that you would do, and you get these little pins. And my mom the other day, she was like, "Hey, I'm going to give you your Volts March hat," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And it was this. It looks like this green, like Peter Pan hat that has all these pins on it. Yeah, and I'm like, "Oh wow, okay. I guess I actually wore that thing." Like when I was a kid,
because everybody,
right? I was like, oh, okay, but it was in this little case, and it has all these pins. But it was kind of cool because it was all like from Munich and up there near Belgium and all these places that we went to down there by the Zugspitze and the Garmisch area and all the rest of the stuff that's down there in southern Germany, and it just brought back a lot of memories. And I just, everybody talks about going to Colorado and Arizona and New Mexico for skiing. I'm like, you haven't been to Austria, brother. Yeah. You haven't been to Switzerland. You know what I mean? So
I don't ski. I would hit it myself. But I have friends that have gone, right? And it's but that's the beauty of it. Yep. You're over there. It's so easy to travel once you're over there. And I've always told, if we younger college kids now or whatever, it's like, just take a year. Yeah. Do, just take a year, backpack travel, slum it for a little bit, go in hostels, you'll regret it if you don't. Right? I did a little bit of that, going into the hostels and stuff. I mean, just super cheap, jumping on the trains and going around. That was really fun. And I only did it for a very short time, but
man, it was worth it. You know what I mean? It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So you come back, you say you're on campus police then.
Yeah.
How did that go down with your other classmates? You got a lot of crap. Because on campus police aren't really popular people. Right?
Yeah, no, they're not. So the funny thing is I was still living in my fraternity house when I became a cop.
Nice.
So I think there was a little bit of conflict.
They had a man on the inside.
Right.
Yeah, they were happy.
Yeah. So they looked at me, and I honestly, I lost friends out of it. You know what I mean? And so it was, and that's okay. I mean, some of them were not doing the things that they needed to be doing. And so it was just kind of one of those life changes where it's like, listen, I'm 22 years old. I'm going into an occupation now. The fun is cool, but like this is a serious occupation now. And so I really took the mantle on that and drove forward with it. Not to say that I never had fun or, all the rest of the stuff, but there were some boundaries that I had to start creating. Walking into homes that, are full of marijuana, I couldn't do that anymore. You know what I mean? I just like that. I couldn't be around that, you know what I mean? And so, I never got into that game. But it was one of those things where like, I've got to create my boundaries now. And so I did. You just focused on your career. I really focused on, becoming an instructor, teaching others, being a field training officer. And I love doing things that were outside on the philanthropical side. So when I was at UConn, we did a lot of Special Olympics events. And they have that grain tower that's right off of 66. And we'd get up there and we would rappel off of that. We'd have these huge events and stuff like that. My roommate and I would actually, I think it was 104.9. I can't remember the radio station, but we would literally stay on top of that grain elevator until we raised, I think it was $100,000. Yeah. And we would do all these events out there, and that was a lot of fun, that community interaction type thing. And to be honest with you, Mike, I think that's what kind of spawned some of the what I'm doing now. And so I really enjoyed it. I love the interaction. I love the community side of the house. And then obviously when you're around Special Olympic athletes, you're just like, your heart melts, you know what I mean? So, and to be able to do all that stuff was really cool. And then, when we, there were several of us that came up to Edmond. Edmond was, they were paying a whole lot better. So we all came, there's a bunch of us that came up here, and just kind of got back into that world. And then I got hired in Edmond in 2001. So I was literally in the hiring process when 9/11 happened. I remember exactly where I was at in 9/11, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? And I got brought on in November of 2001, and it was, after 9/11, a lot of the policing started changing because there was a lot of, at that time, there was not rifts, but there was just there was lack of communication between the local side and the Bureau and various different DEA and ATF and all the rest of the stuff. Well, in my opinion, this is my opinion alone, is that, when the Patriot Act happened, a lot of the communication side started opening doors. We would run something on your, call it MDT or computer, whatever it is, and it would tell you, hey, this is a possible, terrorist, blah, blah, blah. And then it would give you to-dos, right? And so we would never receive that beforehand, right? So we had no idea who we were at. We just thought it was a guy that was just driving down the road, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you're running his name and social security number, all the rest of the stuff, and boom, you're getting these alerts, and you're like, oh, okay, so it really opened doors to that. And then, getting into just various different. I was on the search and recovery team, so it's your dive teams. I did that for 16 years, and so we dove all over the place. Whether it was, people that drowned, evidence based. We would dive at Eufaula. Norman PD would call us. You'd have all these.
So you weren't just specifically. You weren't just Edmond. It was like you're on the dive team for a region. Yeah.
So like OHP, Oklahoma Highway Patrol, if they needed us to help us out, we would go out there. We were kind of known. Around Oklahoma on that specific arena. We could bring vehicles out of the water. We had the sonar capability. We had the boats and stuff like that to really kind of hone in and find this stuff.
You can't see your hand in front of your face.
No, it's dark. It's total black water, man. In fact, the one time that there was a pretty scary incident with me, I was at Eufaula, and I was actually under one of the bridges, and we were diving for some stolen Harley Davidson parts, and I got stuck, and I would hit I had got sucked underneath one of the piers and didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so when I tried to come up, I kept hitting. The only thing that really saved me was a buoy. I had a string buoy that guided me all the way out, and I had picked up this piece that I thought was a motorcycle piece. It ended up not. It was just
junk or something.
No, it was part of it. Yeah, it was actually part of a soda machine. It was So anyway, so I brought it up, and I'm like, get me out of here, type of thing. And so anyway, you have those incidences, and you learn from them. But it was those things. And then I got onto the SWAT team in 2005. We were 6-time state champs on the SWAT.
What does that look like for competing?
So you go all over Oklahoma. I got my basic SWAT course in Dallas. So I went down to Dallas. The DFW has a huge facility, hangar facility, where a lot of your SWAT officers can go there and train. So I did that, got my basic certification there, and then came up. But we would have call-outs, various different call-outs, and we would tie in with Norman PD. So if Norman was on a call and they exceeded a certain amount of time, we were their backup. Okay. And then if Norman or if we were on a call for a certain amount of time, Norman would back us up.
What is the time constraint?
16 hours.
Okay.
So if we were on the objective or at the house or whatever it is, anything, whatever it is, right? Yeah. 16 hours was our max.
Would you go over that 16 hours very often?
No. That is
something seriously wrong.
Yeah, you really start upping the risk. Yeah. There's a risk management piece of that, and so we would do that, and then obviously in fun, just to sharpen our skills and really kind of test each other. We would do these competitions from Stillwater, Tulsa, Norman. We held it at our training facility several different times. Yeah. So not only were we able to participate, but then if we won the tournament, then we were the ones that hosted it the next year. Mm-hmm. So you would develop all these different training scenarios to put them through, whether it's shoot houses, long range, sniper shots, your carbine, your what they call 3-gun, all the rest of the stuff that they do. And so you would get individual winners, but then you would also, get your overall winner of that. And you'd have vendors and all the rest of it. So it was really kind of a SWAT oriented.
It's good for camaraderie.
It is too, because then you get to
competition,
right? Not only just your own team, but then you get to also network with the other team members and all the rest of the stuff, and really kind of get to understand what they're doing, some of the things that they've seen, and all the rest of the stuff. So it's really a benefit for all the teams and the agencies around, because you can talk shop, and obviously the objective is to become better.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So
I'm sure you had some really good talented people out there who could,
brother, we did
from a long way away. And
man, I'm telling you, some of our
serious
athletes, snipers. I mean, precision. I mean, just out of control. These guys were so good. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, and then I got done with that. I think it was 2016 is when 17 is when I got off the team. I had an eye injury when I was in Afghanistan. I lost a significant amount of sight in my left eye, and so I wasn't able to wear your nods, your night vision.
Is it like just a corner, or is it like a pin, like when you look through a straw or something?
No, it's a scar on my cornea itself. It was a scratch that just got really, really badly infected.
And you're in the desert.
Yeah, and I can't do anything about it. I mean, they literally told me I was having an allergy attack. I was like, whatever. Anyway, so I get back, and they finally got it fixed. But the problem was I see 2400 out of this left eye, so I can't utilize it. So I'm literally a one-eye guy. And so I felt like I was going to compromise a team if I did that. And so I got off of that. I couldn't do the dive anymore. And to be honest with you, Mike, it really kind of gut punched me. Yeah,
like you're at the, from what it sounds like, it's like when you dive into it, like you're doing courses, you're climbing. There's always something next. You're a go getter, right? You're always going to something, and the leadership thing ticks in, and then you get that, and it's just like, come back to back to earth a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
you are human.
You get that shock, right? Like, and like you said, what we've talked about, and what all these first responders, they inevitably are going to go through something like that, right? Whether it's under the bridge or or an incident or whatever, and when your whole purpose is tied up in this, and you feel like you're doing so much good for the world, and then you're like, I can't do now. What do I do? Right? You probably feel empty.
Right. And you do.
You don't want to sit at a desk.
You do. And you want to. you want to, then that's why we talk about repurposing.
Yeah.
There's a purpose behind everything that, it's a very service oriented type of concept, and, we go into this world with not a lot of baggage,
Right.
and now we're carrying this huge ruck, that's massive, and it has all the things that we've done, and to not have any type of process to lighten it up or, dismount it. That's something that we need to fix, and that's why we stood up this project. And so, I had a lot of that, and a lot of the guys and gals that I know are having those, and they're various different forms.
Yeah.
Your fire guys, your EMS guys, your police, they all have various different forms of it, but there has to be some sort of process to where they can download all that. And that's where we really wanted to step in, and everybody that teaches or instructs or comes in front of our people are all prior first responders. So that's something that we really wanted to make sure that was there.
There's a level of respect in you resonate with the person that you're, like, if you're coming in and you're pouring your heart out and you're being vulnerable, which is not easy to do when you're in such a heavy kind of male dominated, generally testosterone filled world, as a first responder, and you're doing what, saving people or doing whatever it is, and you have someone on the other side, they're not going to respect someone who's if I walk in, I'm like, hey, let me, talk to me about your feelings, and who are you?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't know what I'm talking about, right?
And there's been many of those instances where they go and they do that, and they'll go, this is not happening.
No,
you know what I mean? And
that's an insult.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
To bring someone in that's not one of your own, quote, own.
Right.
The part of the club, right?
And that's one of the things that we really do. We want to make sure that these individuals that we bring in are kind of the leading experts, but also have a heart for service because there's a lot of aftercare that goes in, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these individuals will come in to our courses or seminars, and they're already showing their vulnerable state, right?
Yeah.
Because they enrolled.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now they're sitting down and they're looking across the classroom, and they're sizing up.
Yeah.
That's what we
who's
do.
More messed up,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And or do I know you? Or I hope you're not going to say anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you want to create an environment to where it's comfortable, but bringing those people that have that experience in front of them and say, "Hey guys, we are you. We've been there." That type of thing. And here's how I'm going to make you better. That's the thing that just kind of it releases that tension. And they can come in and really just dive into, some of these guys are coming in with just their finances are so messed up because of various different reasons, right? And they're looking at their life and they're going, how do I fix this? And if they don't have the resource, then how are they going to function professionally?
Yeah. Yeah, you got so much weight on them that they can't think clearly because they're not thinking about, like I said, their debt or whatever it is, versus, even just family stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times it's money, right? A lot of the biggest, the stuff we stress about is generally money, and that's outside and in every industry, right? Every person does that, but the baggage that, it's amazing how much that clouds the mind when you're trying to, do a normal quote normal job, right? When you put all that in your head. Tell me about so you have the eye issue. You get that taken away from you.
Yeah.
Where are you mentally in that space? How do you then have to repurpose, and what was there for you when you decided, and where do you go next?
So I was lost, mate. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was painful. To look at my fellow teammates and to look at that and take that thing away, to literally take all the gear out of my trunk and give that to was painful.
Yeah.
That was crushing to the ego, to the soul, to all the rest of the stuff, right? And so the great thing is my lovely wife was right there next to me the entire time. She's a 2-time cancer recovery, and so she had cancer when I was in Afghanistan too, and so she had 48 lymph nodes taken out of her neck. And I looked at her and I was like, if I can get through it, or if she got through it, I can get through this, right? And so we really did lean on each other. Don't get me wrong, there was definitely some, I was mad, angry, you name it, why me? It took me from the time I got home until the time that I could actually put a contact in my eye, and actually it was almost 2 years.
Oh wow.
So I would literally be in the shower, and this is no joke.
Yeah.
Literally in the shower, just like have the heat on my eye, and just stay there.
Yeah.
And then that wouldn't do anything. So then I'd go to cold compression. And I can't look at anything because if I looked at my phone, it literally just, it felt like somebody was tearing my eye.
Oh, wow.
So then I would have, so what I did, and I'm a very faith-based man, so I would go and listen to audibles and I would listen to, faith-based music and just really lift my spirits, because honestly, that was my take a knee moment. Mm-hmm. Like that was my, I surrender. I can't do anything about this. I go to the gym, I do all the rest of this stuff, but this is bigger than physical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now I've got to get past this process of, all right, it's your will. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so when I did that, I started seeing the kind of the fruits of the labor coming. And I started seeing that I was able to start doing things back that I used to do. The healing process, they started figuring it out. I was at D. McGee Eye Institute. That it just, all that stuff was just finally coming to fruition. And I was actually able to get back out there and do the job. I was, like I said, I was in the gang enforcement side of the house, so I really focused in on that, trying to collect the intel, working, I was in Chicago in 2018, rolling around with those guys on the south side of Chicago.
How was that?
Bro.
Eye-opening, literally?
Bro. I did, in one day, I was with a couple guys that are, they're called TFOs, they're task force officers for the ATF. Mm-hmm. They are Chicago officers, but they work for the ATF. And we're in an unmarked vehicle. I'm in, just plain clothes, hat, and a bulletproof vest on. And we're in Inglewood, California. We're at Inglewood, Southside Chicago, and we're rolling by, and we see this group of guys on the side of the road, and they looked at us, and we're rolling up to them, and they all pulled up their shirt, and they turned around because they knew that we were the police.
Straight away.
Just straight away. Just like, I was like, what is going on? what type of environment am I in? Right. This is not Edmond. This is not Sparkle City anymore.
No,
right? This is not Edmond.
Yeah.
So then, we went to various different drive-bys and shootings. There was one scene that we went to, had 135 rounds from 5 different weapons. Didn't hit anybody.
Wow.
Nobody. We went to a domestic. I remember going to a violent domestic. It was involved a firearm. Somebody was stabbed or something like that too. And it took literally, I'm not joking, Mike, 20 Chicago officers just to handle that case. So we show up there. You have the Chicago officers that are talking to the people involved.
Yeah.
Then you kind of had a perimeter of Chicago officers that are out to make sure the crowd doesn't, because it's a bunch of yelling and screaming, all the rest of this stuff. And then literally we showed up and they told us to watch the windows.
Wow.
I'm like, why am I watching the windows? Because somebody could snipe us.
Yeah. This is an active problem.
That is what they deal with every day.
Gosh.
Every day in Chicago.
We're coming back to Edmond.
Yeah.
Just like cakewalk. What you guys are
I was
doing.
like, let me tell you what I just experienced.
Yeah.
And then even in LA, when I went out to, I went to the scene where like Reginald Denny, during the Watts riots and all the rest of the stuff. But I, rolled around with the LAPD's, their gang unit. Was out there for a couple conferences out there, and we're standing on the side of the road, and we'll just wait until we get called. That's that was just normal. You know what I mean? And so and some of that happens here in Oklahoma City too. But it's just it's that type of and so it was just, that was the world that they live in. You know what I mean? And how do you operate in that? And so I was able to focus in on that. There was a lot of different tactics because social media and all the rest of the stuff. They will send those. Somebody in Oklahoma will see some gang member and some Piru gang member in LA and some Piru gang member here in Oklahoma City will see some of the tactics they use via social media or whatever it is, and they'll use the same tactic. You know what I mean? So it was more us really kind of getting spun up on what they were doing and then bringing it back. So we knew how to track these guys down. Oklahoma City has a fantastic, they went from a gang unit to what they call VCAT, which is your violent crime acquisition team. It used to be the Oklahoma City gang unit. So a lot of those guys are really great. They know what they're doing, and we would work with them, especially if we had a violent incident in our city.
Yeah.
A lot of times it was somebody from Oklahoma City that came up to ours and then went back into Oklahoma City. So we had a really good relationship with them. So I really prided on that.
So you go. You mentioned kind of you've always kind of been pretty faith-based.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? When does that kind of start? I assume it comes from family, but when does it really get serious for you?
It's still going.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a process that you constantly am figuring out, right? You know, so there was a lot of times. So I was a cradle Catholic. You know, I was a Catholic all my life, and there was a certain time frame where I kind of went off and didn't stay faithful. And as I got to that eye experience and all the things that I started seeing, don't get me wrong, I believed in God. I believed in the power of Him and all the things and the blessings that He gives us. But my eye incident really kind of propelled that more. And I've had multiple occasions where I've gone, okay, you know what I mean? So like right here, Jeremiah 29:11, you know, he knows our plans. You know, his plans I know for you. And that's, you know, I have my wife and my daughter. Like, I know He's got a plan for us. You know what I mean? And that's something to where I really I kneel down to, and the reason why is because I've tried to do it on my own, and it's never been very successful, right? So if I give it to Him, okay, I'm pretty sure He's going to take care of me. You know what I mean? And my wife and I, we have a great relationship in the sense of, you know, every night we sit down and we talk everything, the days. We don't let it get in our way. After I got back from my deployment in 2020, because we were deployed during COVID, that was horrible. But after I got back, and then I was in my officer-involved shooting in 2021, that really was another boosting of that, because we got into counsel. We did a lot of marriage counseling. We're still in marriage counseling to this day. And so I'm a huge advocate of that for our mental, spiritual health. And not to say that I haven't screwed up anymore or she hasn't screwed up anymore, but we are constantly trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so we stay in our church, and I love the fact that we're able to do that in a thriving sense to help each other out. You know, we try to level each other up as much as possible, and just, you know, we have different systems. You know, I pray with my daughter every night. You know, she's 9 years old, and in fact, if I don't do it, she actually like does this. Hey, Mike, we got to, you know, or hey, Jeff, we got to pray. You know, I'll send audio messages to my wife. Hey, I forgot to pray before we left, and I'll send an audio message to my wife and my daughter. You know what I mean? It's just those things that if you're intentional to it, you know, the day's going to go much better. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where. And it's still work in progress.
I that's the one thing that like is clearly apparent in the time we've been talking, is that, you know, you're never settled, right? Your personality is to always strive and always, you know, better yourself. But the beauty of it is that you clearly realize that there's not just one area; it's every area, right? And you know, everyone's going to benefit from that. How'd you meet your wife?
So we were friends for about 10 years. Knew each other for a long time. And when I was leaving for basic training, I was single at the time, and she had, you know, kind of recently split up from her boyfriend. And so we just it was my going away party, literally. And so we just started talking, and it was one of those things where it was just a connection. You know, we've been friends she knew all the baggage and all the things, and I knew all her stuff, and it was just one of those things where like we trusted each other. You know what I mean? And we were attracted to each other beforehand. We just never got to that point. You know what I mean? And so it was one of those things where it's like, man, this makes sense. You know what I mean? And so we started, you know, dating, and I would actually write her when I was in basic and that kind of thing. And then, you know, coming back. And so we got back, and it took off, and we were engaged probably about a year later. And then, you know, she was not a military police she didn't have any of that background in her family. You know, her dad was an engineer at Kerr-McGee, and you know, her wife or her mom is from Mexico City, so she's half Hispanic. You know what I mean? So she didn't come from that environment, and so moving into this was like, wow, you know what I mean? So it was different for her, you know what I mean, to take on. And she liked it, but at the same time, her love language is a little bit different than mine, you know what I mean? I'm more of an extrovert than she is. She's, you know, she likes to, and that's something we had to figure out. Like, you know what I mean? It was one of those things where it's like, okay, that's probably one of the first things we should have asked. Right. You know what I mean? Because I met her out assuming that she liked going out. You know what I mean?
Socializing, double dates,
exactly, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so anyway, you know, we learn from each other. We've been married for 13 years, going on 14 year pretty soon, and you know, we have one kiddo. We've never been able to gain another child from that, but that's fine, and that's something that we're okay with, you know. But she's a rock of the house, you know what I mean? And it's just, it came from a long time friendship, realizing that God places you in those situations for a reason. And then, you know, seeing the opportunity and grabbing that opportunity, you know, and not really worrying about what anybody else says.
Yeah. Right. Because there's a lot of that, right? Especially small towns.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you know, word travels fast, or social media's made everything a lot smaller.
Yeah,
smaller. Tell me about going in the military and how different that was to your police stuff.
So it was
artillery side too.
Yeah, so it was same but different. Okay. So I really went into the military because I was really seeking some leadership training.
Okay.
Unfortunately, kind of in the police fire world, everything is really linear. There's not a lot of strategy that's done within those worlds, and the military is really good at you know, figuring out different courses of action for XYZ, right? So they strategize a lot. Yeah. And so coming into the military, you know, going through the basic training, seeing all the 18 and 19-year-olds at basic training when I'm 34. Here's one thing. I ended up being in the top 10% physically fitness-wise, and I'm like, this is sad. I'm 34 years old. You guys should be smoking me, and that's not happening. You talked so much trash. I did. I talked so much junk. Yeah. And then, you know, kind of going forward into OCS, you know, I was some of the cadre knew of the world that came from, and they had a more heightened expectation of me, and which I loved. You know, it gave me the ability to create and to be the person I wanted to be. So I went into it pretty. Pretty level-headed, but then also wanting to have my mind expand because I want that leadership possibility. And man, they threw me in the mix of it. We did phase 3 up in Fort Lewis, Washington State, and I mean we're in this. A lot of these guys that were training us were special operators, and so they threw us in this. They call it the Mount. It's a city of concrete, and they have your simulated. They are actual real machine guns and all this, but they have your blank rounds and stuff like that, and it is loud, and it sounds like it's combat, and it's crazy and it's chaotic, and you have to lead in that, and that's something that. Like if you didn't do it, then you knew it. You know what I mean? And so it really kind of forced you to think that process. And then coming back, you go through on the artillery world. I liked it because I wanted to go into the actual intelligence world at first. For the needs of the Army, they said, we're going to send you to field artillery. Okay, it's in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. It's close. I can do that. And I was married at the time. So this is 2012. I went to the school down there, and it was a 6-month school. And I had not been to any type of schooling and whatever in almost 15, 17 years. Yeah. So to throw me in a school environment was like, whoa.
Wait, I have to read and write
I have to read. I have to study. I have to remember this stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that was challenging. You know, a lot of the guys were younger than I was, but I got along with them well. They knew what I did, and so there was an actual mutual respect in that. And then to be deployed, I was a lieutenant at the time, and when I was with 4th ID, I was the only lieutenant on a division staff, and what that means is I was the youngest junior officer at a division level, which is a massive level where there's a 2-star general that's on top of it, and everybody else is about a major or above. I was a lieutenant, and my rank speaks volumes, but at the same time, they knew because of my background, they thought that I could handle it, and I did, and so I was able to do a lot of cool things and be able to influence some of the combat operations out there, and so that was really neat, and it really opened my eyes into how to lead. So then when we deployed in 1920, I had that 120-man unit, but I had all my people were in 4 different spots, and this is during COVID. Yeah, and so I couldn't I had to manage through a telephone.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I couldn't go see my people in Iraq.
You're looking at dots on a map.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in Kuwait, and I got another group of guys that's in Iraq, and I got another group of guys that's in UAE, and all of it. And I'm just like, so it was really hard to kind of keep that centralized control. So it was more decentralized, but that was. But you would have your conversation, your sync meetings, and all the rest of the stuff, and how are you as a lieutenant taking care of your people and all the rest of the stuff? What issues do you have? Those types of things, and you're not only are you developing yourself, but you're also developing your direct reports or your subordinates underneath you, right? So that really kind of opened a lot of the floodgates of creativity and strategy mindset and stuff like that.
Yeah. What's the artillery side like? When you're just pulling the pin and sending shells down the range?
Yeah, so it's actually a lot of fun. I wasn't much of what they call a cannon cocker.
Yeah.
I was your long range precision rockets. So so your HIMARS that were a lot of talked about when Ukraine and Russia were starting there.
Off the trucks and stuff.
Yeah, so we did a lot of your so some of my equipment actually when I was in the battalions went over to Ukraine to help them out. But that's what we did. We did your long. The funny thing is when our stuff was shot, they didn't like the sound of it there. The village people didn't like it because it was so loud. The funny thing is that when it detonated on the objectives, you would hear chatter like, "Where did that come from?"
Because they have no idea.
They have no idea because it was shot from 80 miles away or 120 miles away, and they never heard it. You know what I mean? So because they're used to UASs and airplanes and all the rest of the stuff, and all of a sudden this munition
comes before it's coming.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So it was awesome to hear that. So
it was like the 12-year-old in you. Just that's the coolest thing ever, right? It's just pushing buttons. Yeah. You're just sending rockets.
It did, and there's a lot of that to be able to shoot that munition. At least in Afghanistan, was at a 2-star level. So a 2-star general was the only one that could allow us what they call authorize it. It's called release authority, and so they were the only ones that would allow us to release it. And so because we're a division level asset. When I was in that Iraq, Syria area, all the rest of the stuff, it was a 3-star level. So because we were shooting. We had on deck. We had these. They're called Mike 57s. They're ATACMs. They're 500 pounders. Oh, wow. And so that causes a lot of damage. Yeah. And so it's a 3-star level release authority. Yeah. And so there was a lot of responsibility on us to do it right. And the field artillery world. You look kind of back at the colonial days and all the rest of the stuff. The reason why they call the field artillery the king of battle and the infantry the queen of battle is because we, when you heard the shock and awe when the Iraq War kicked off, is because of all that stuff is prepping the battlefield for those maneuver elements, those infantry guys that come in afterwards.
You're taking out targets.
You're taking out everything so they can go in, right? It's kind of a second phase operation. So that's the kind of cool thing. And so that's really neat to be able to do that, to be able to, and then also you're assisting. If they need a call for fire for something, whatever it is, they're not getting effects from their weapons that they have. hey, I need a munition dropped right here. Cool, gotcha.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you shoot it, and you see it. So it's pretty.
Yeah,
neat.
you're an asset, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's not, an air, like something, if they don't have helicopters coming in to help them out, or flybys or whatever, C-130 in the air, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of times when we were in Afghanistan, we had specifically, we had they were 82nd Airborne guys that were down right there off of the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. And I remember the general coming in and going, Jeff, where's the HIMARS? And I said, sir, last week you literally sent them back to the United States. So I don't have those. I don't have those right now. So we tried to range another HIMARS unit that was a little bit. It was outside their range that they had per what the munitions they had, just because of safety reasons. But we weren't able to utilize them. But it's that chess play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There were times where, it was called a troops in contact, a TIC. You'd have a TIC going on, and I was like, all right, what air asset do we have? What what field artillery asset do we have to help the maneuver guys out? And a lot of times it was your soft guys. Yeah. They're out there getting into gun battles, and so they had some of their assets through JSOC. They had some of it. A lot of times they would bring us in to help out, right? And so you didn't know like what birds were on station, meaning like were they actually there? Could they help them out? And then you would pull different assets. You'd pull what they call PTIDs, which is a big balloon that's got a camera on it, and you swivel it. Can you see what they're doing? You know what I mean? Those types of things. And so there's a lot of coordination pieces, a lot of different decision makers, and the military is good at doing that when their equipment works, right? And and there's a lot of crosstalk between each other. You know what I mean? So I feel like the United States military is a lethal force when it's allowed to fully get after it. Yeah.
What did you ever run into any Brits when you were over there?
I did.
What were they like?
Oh, they're great. Yeah. In fact, one of them
any
made
special forces Brits.
Actually, a couple of them were intel guys too, and they came up with this thing called the man card. Okay. It was a coin, and it said man card on it, and they would give you one if you actually showed your manhood. It was hilarious. You know what I mean? It was like
I know you're deployed. I know you're supposed to be a badass. Right. You haven't actually graduated to your man card yet until you've done something.
I was like, and I got gifted 2 of those, and I was like, I don't know how I got these, but I got them. You know what I mean? But I mean, just great dudes. We had the Brits, we had Australians, you had I'm trying to think of who else, the Romanians. We had a bunch of different groups that we tied in with, so it was really cool.
Yeah. Who's like looked up to or feared over there as like in that kind of world then, when you're like, you guys, you're like, oh, I guess we get to work with this group today? Or is there any like of that? Yes and no? Kinda.
I mean, to be honest with you,
the opposite. Everyone's looking at you.
No. I mean, for me, coming in from the National Guard side and going into an active duty, Compo 1 unit, for me, it was when guys walked in with no name tapes on.
Something's up.
And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? So one of the cool things, too, is they actually brought me in to vet a lot of the some of the objectives that they were going after because of my gang intel side of the house. They really wanted us to kind of help them out and like, hey, this guy's developing IEDs. This guy's facilitating the IEDs, i.e. muling it, blah, blah, blah. Or this guy is a cash guy, or this guy is moving heroin here, the rest of the stuff, and then we would validate them as military targets. And so I got to play a little bit of part in that. And that was pretty neat to do some stuff like that.
Yeah, they're just a large gang over there.
Exactly. I mean, they would call them the Kandahar network. They would call them the various different networks that they had. And I'm like, well, that's like the Crips and Bloods. You know what I mean? So it's very, very similar in nature.
Yeah. So you go back into Edmund PD. When you came back, kind of tying this into what you do now, like, did you have did you know you were repurposing straight away into Edmond PD, or did you have a downtime to think, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah, so I think, off of my first deployment, obviously coming back, at my time, because you have the pension time, right? So you need to do at least 20 years in order to get your pension. And I was kind of back and forth in between doing 20 and 25 years. And there's a money reason in doing that. And so when I came back in 2020, that's when I really started like, all right, I got to figure out what I'm going to do after this. Like, because I'm not doing 30 years, 35 years here. Yeah. I'm not doing that. And so, I was in my officer involved shooting, and that really kind of propelled, I need to start looking at this. Do I really want to continue?
That was a wake up.
Yeah. It was a kind of a wake up, but at the same time, it was like, my wife literally watched from the Channel 9 news helicopter me doing this, involved in this, right? So I'm like, yeah, I don't need that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And
good.
so I needed to find out where I could leverage my skill set, identify a problem, because if there's one thing that I feel like I'm good at is identifying a problem and then finding the fix.
Yeah.
Not to say that I know what the fix is immediately, but at least figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
And so,
wanting to figure it out.
Exactly, and having the desire
passing it off.
Exactly, and that's why I think I take so big ownership in this whole process, and that's why I'm such a big advocate for it, is because I've seen some of the issues that we've all had when we leave our service, and so that really kind of it propelled me. So literally, like, today is the 1 year day of my.
Today is?
Yeah, today is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I left 1 year ago today.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how blessed I am. So
1 year.
Yeah.
I mean, 1 year of doing your thing.
Yeah, 1 year doing my thing, and then
learning the nonprofit side.
We are.
Right?
Like I have no business degree. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just I keep telling people I'm a dumb cop trying to figure things out. But
that's why we have board members.
Exactly right. Exactly.
That's why you go get a really good board.
I'm telling you. So like for instance, my president of my board, he used to be an Edmond officer, and now runs all of sales for Samsung.
Oh, wow.
So he worked for Sony for a long time, and then came over in this world. And he's been a massive mentor, coach to me. And so, just trying to figure that out. But, you kind of ask, obviously we've been in this kind of this awareness, knowledge piece, and we're working in this kind of this application, like applying, what we think our curriculum is to help these guys and gals out. And I have a 5-year vision, Mike, of being a national foundation in 5 years. Because I think, once we go to Dallas and once we go to Wichita and once we go to, Little Rock and those places on a regional basis, it's going to start spreading like wildfire. And the way that we want to do that is, through ambassadorships, different chapters of OCP, that kind of thing, and have everything central headquartered here in Oklahoma, and it monitored and given guidance from here in Oklahoma, but and being able to filter it out. And then in 5 years have it nationwide. I've already had several friends of mine from Chicago and LA, and they're like, "What are you doing?" They would love to bring that out there. It's just building the structure in order to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So that's where we want to go. And in the meantime, you're building your continuity, your culture. And we do that with, different partners, business partners that want to be some of these hiring entities that are, bringing our firefighters and police and stuff like that. And I'll give you a couple examples. Oklahoma City firefighter was in the Murrah bombing, and now he works for Bitcoin. Another one is another firefighter, did 11 years at Edmond, and he owns 175 Herbalife, cafes. There's an Oklahoma City officer I know of that did 10 years, and I've talked to him, and he as a lieutenant, and now he's a home builder on the south side of Oklahoma City. Those types of things,
Yeah.
that they can get into after they leave their service. And that's really kind of, we advocate for those businesses to give them an opportunity, right? And we do that through, we have what we call a Thriving Responder course, which is an 8-hour course. And this is more of like, from your academy on how do you stay healthy? How do you stay fiscally strong? All the rest of the stuff as you're going through. And then we have a 4-day seminar, which is really kind of our offboarding process where it's called Beyond the Badge, where they come in, they get all the financial assets, their holistic resources. They figure out how to write a resume. They actually do mock job interviews with SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, those types. And then, we have an employment expo afterwards to where they bring in kind of this vendorship where these companies come in, and then the first responder goes around and looks around and see what's available to them, gives them, and that might be something where they don't get something right then.
But it's hope. It's a start.
Exactly.
Right? Like there's an idea of, this is what I don't want to do, but this one piqued my interest.
Absolutely.
I had a great, conversation with this guy in this industry. And that's
Absolutely.
This. And I think what you said too is touching on like having people in your people who are ready to employ. First responders coming out that get it.
Yep.
Right? Because it's a lot harder, I'm sure, to find someone that's no idea of the first responder world. Like, maybe your wife's kind of, as an example, side of the family, they're not, none of them in the family have ever first responded. They don't know that way of life.
Right.
And they're an owner of a business, and they're trying to hire someone who's brought up the way that you've been brought up.
Right.
It just doesn't go well, right?
Right.
So it sounds like there's a lot of education from both sides.
Yeah, and we're even exploring, like some intern possibilities. Like say I was 4 months out from leaving the PD. Hey, I'd like to go intern at Continental or whatever it is, or something like that, and having those agreements. We're looking at some various different. I've sat down with a couple legislators, expressed they weren't aware a lot of these issues, and some of them were, but they just didn't really know how to solve it. Right.
Well, and they also have a lot of other problems.
Absolutely,
It's
too.
Just one of 20 other things they got to deal with that day, right?
Yeah,
and sadly, it gets kicked down the can because you think, they're a police officer, they should be able to do whatever, or a firefighter, or something.
Right, and I get it, and that's kind of why I'm pretty patient with this whole thing. But it's I want to be able to instill that in them that hey, and that's part of that awareness knowledge piece. Right, to bring that to light to them. So I'm hopefully, getting to some of the caucuses and be able to have that conversation that, hey, it's not just about money. Yeah. It's about quality of life, afterwards,
prolonging it
exactly.
Based on the data.
Yeah. Giving stability to life, you know what I mean? Giving stability in their home, you know what I mean? And that's really what, what we're striving to do is I would like these guys to see their kids graduate, get through high school and college and get married and all the rest of that stuff and not die off so early. You know what I mean? So that's really our purpose, and I'm just ready for the multitude of amount of stories that's going to come out of it. I mean, we're just a year into it. I really do look forward to when we hit that 3-year and 5-year, where we're going to be at. So
it's exciting. And I think one thing you just said too is people probably have listened to this and don't really think it's easy to forget the ripple effect from the families, right? Like, you've got someone in the house who's trying to figure out what they want to do, but, the kid sees them stressed out, the relationship with their wife or their husband, like this, people forget, you just forget about it because you're thinking about the problem itself, not like the ripple. So there's, like I said, there's that side and changing families and really helping the wider network of the first responder world. Events, what do you have coming up? How can people get involved? And then website is On Call Project.
Yeah, so oncallproject.com, On Call Project all together. And you go to the events page, you'll see we have a breakfast coming up on the 13th of February at Victory Church. Victory Church. There's sponsorship still available. We're about 75% filled right now. So really, if you want to learn, if you're a big first responder supporter, also businesses that actually want to network and that gives it an ability to do that, but then also hear what this talent pool can do for their business, to come in, and then also we've got a golf tournament coming up on the 7th of April with Heart of Alliance, John Daly's foundation. So we're partnering with them on April 7th at the Greens Country Club. So doing that down the line. We've got some small ones where like Pickleman's is doing a day for us, that kind of thing. My wife and I are attending an event tonight where we're being gifted some things, but the biggest thing that we really want to do is we want to be able to let the first responders know that this is out there. Like, this is out there. It's here for you. Fire, police. There's no shame in the game. Come in here, get your personal development right, so you can be the best professional you can out there, and then look to leveling yourself up and forging your future by coming to a lot of these events and being a part of it. And I'm very thankful for a lot of our donors that choose to stay quiet, which is great. You know what I mean? And they love it. They love what we're doing, and they're just sitting back and enjoying what they're seeing right now. So, we're in various different conferences and all over the state. Where I'm actually going to St. Louis in March. It's called the International Law Enforcement Education Training Association. It's like 1,700 law enforcement officers from international, not just. So we're going to be represented there for that. That's going to really kind of propel us even more. But I think God's doing really, really great work in our organization, and I'm just really excited for it.
And you're available to go speak, right?
Absolutely.
Like you speak as well. So
so I talk
on the website and reach out.
I do. Yeah, you reach out to me. I call it Next Phase Leadership. It's we looking into what that next phase looks like, and how do you lead into it? Not only just yourself, but if you are a supervisor of some sort, if you're a mentor, coach, or whatever, how do you leave your direct reports or subordinates into going into the next phase of life? And it's really kind of a cool deal to where you can kind of take that health and hope with ownership. I call it the H2O. To where you can take that and really just plus yourself up really well and make yourself wealthy, healthy, and able to get through life.
To your family.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Last question, because I'm in the real estate world. I always love to ask this. Finish with this. If you were to have your dream house, what would your dream house be? Non-negotiable. No, just this is what I want my dream house.
So I watch your page a lot on whether it's LinkedIn or whatever. And my dream house, I told my wife this. I said, I love our house. I said, but I need a backyard that has a great open field scenery that's covered, that I could have 20 people out there, has an incredible pool, and because I'm an outside guy. I like being outside. I don't like being inside very much. We have a place up at Lake Tenkiller. I love being outside and doing that thing. But if I could have that would be something that I would love to be able to get out there and have my own kitchen outside, be able to grill, just all that stuff out there. So I actually looked at one of your houses out there at Arcadia, and I had that amazing
Such
pool.
a good backyard.
I was like, oh my God, dude. I told look at my wife, I said, 1.6 mil, come on. And she was like, yeah, right. But yeah, if you asked me my dream house, that would be it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time out. It's awesome to be a part of our group, and glad that you're. I wasn't part of the group much longer than you, so we're like the young ones in our networking group. So it's fun to do this. I'm sure the guys are going to get a kick out of listening to this. But for people listening, if you know any first responders, just make them aware of it. And then come to the website, link that in the description down below, oncallproject.com, and kind of go from there. So
Mike, thank you very much for this. It's a pleasure to be here, and brother, I hope that we can continue our relationship going on our road for a long time.
I'm excited. We need to go and do something.
We need to get on the golf course, buddy.
Get on the golf course too. But people listening, thanks for checking in, and we'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.